Hello folks. I recently saw some video of a Boeing 777 that crashed at the San Francisco airport. I've flown in and out of there several times, and I can tell you it's just not as big as you would think. And since the winds are prevalent out of the west almost all the time, and it's usually foggy, this is the most often used approach is to come in over the ocean from the east. As you can see these live shots, this is how it looks. Well, it's sad that some of the folks were killed, but some were saved, including the pilot. It was determined that the landing glide slope system was under repair for months, and it was off. That system usually locks onto the plane's autopilots and guide it in. Well, in this case, it was in and off. But then, many other pilots had landed there with no problem, so they found out later that the pilots were relying on another system called the AFCS, and that's Auto Flight Control System, and that keeps the speed up and will not let the plane fly so slow that it'll fall out of the sky. Well, it got confused due to the ALS system being turned off, so it began landing too slow and low. Well, the pilot said they felt fine because they knew the flight speed would always be maintained by the AFCS, but not. And of course they realized it too late. They punched the engines, but alas, they clipped the seawall. Well, since seeing this, I thought I'd fly my Aerofly full-scale simulator and see if I could land on that same runway and how hard it could be with no ALS or AFCS to depend on. Of course, I know beforehand that these systems will be off, so I have an advantage where the pilots of this plane didn't. So I usually fly around San Francisco in my helicopter, and occasionally I fly over to the San Francisco airport. But after seeing this video and the crash, I decided to try to fly that 777. I've seen it as an optional plane to fly, but I never tried to fly it. It's quite big and heavy. It also doesn't turn on a dime. I have the option to have the auto flight control system run in the Aerofly sim, but I can also turn it off. And that's what I did, so I'm going to also now have to figure out how to fly and land this thing right away. So here goes. Well, the first thing that I found out while flying this Boeing 777 is it's big. It doesn't just turn on a dime. I also found that, albeit I'm a pretty good RC plane and heli pilot, I also know how responsive sticks are in small planes in our Phantom jets from experience. But here, I find myself over-controlling. And because it takes a little more time to move this big monster, then I have to overcorrect using the rudder and wind up overdoing that too. So I've made several landings here, and I must say it's really tough. Too hard of a touchdown results in a crash. Also, the runway seems, really short, so landings have got to be just right. I wouldn't want to live on the west side of the runway. I can certainly understand why the landing vector system is really depended on by pilots at this point, because when I turn on the autopilot on the sim, it flies it right in. I also know from the video of the real crash there is that if you're depending on AI for flying this thing, it might be a good idea to keep your eyes on the altimeter and airspeed indicators. Don't just assume the AFCS will always work. You see, those pilots depended on the low speed failsafe to keep them aloft, when in fact it was unable to.
500, 400, 300, 200, 100, 50, 40, 30, 20, 10. 50, 40, 30, 20, 10. 400, 300, 200, 100.
All right, enough of that. Let's take the helicopter out again over the city. Enjoy the ride and God bless.